Learning objectives. After completing this module, learners will be able to understand and describe developments leading to French Revolution and ideas of nationalism. Understand and explain how nationalism gained ground in Europe. Understand and describe what led to revival of conservatism after 1815. Understand and describe the various revolutions that took place between 1830 and 1848. Understand and describe Romanticism, a cultural movement. Understand and describe the economic hardships faced by Europe. Understand and describe the process of unification of Germany, Italy, and development of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. Explain the allegorical representation of countries by artists. Explain why nationalism and imperialism led Europe to disaster in 1914. The French Revolution and the idea of the nation. Nationalism is an ideology that gives a sense of oneness or a common identity to the people of a nation through language, history, culture, national flag, national symbol, national anthem, etc. Till the middle of 19th century, various regions of Europe were ruled by absolute monarchs. The French Revolution in 1789 introduced the idea of nation-state. However, France shaped into a democratic nation-state in the true sense of 100 years later. In 1789, the monarchy was replaced by a body of citizens declaring people as a supreme power. The revolutionaries encouraged the concept of fatherland and citizen to acquire a common identity as a community with equal rights. Replacement of the royal standard by the new French flag or the tricolour, election of Estates General and renamed National Assembly by a body of active citizens, introduction of a centralized administrative system, uniform laws, uniform system of weights and measures, and adoption of French as a common language were the hallmarks of the French Revolution. The French armies carried the idea with a missionary zeal into other parts of Europe. Napoleon led France from 1799 to 1815. He reintroduced monarchy but also introduced a Napoleonic civil code of 1804 which abolished privileges based on birth, gave equal rights and a right to property. These reforms were hailed as tools to freedom initially in Holland, Milan, Warsaw, etc. But people realized soon that they did not give them political freedom. Increased taxes, censorship, and forcing people to join French armies turned people hostile. The making of nationalism in Europe. Europe had no nation-states in the early 18th century as the Europeans did not share a common identity or culture. There were different ethnic groups. The Habsburg Empire of Austria-Hungary had French, Italian, and German-speaking people. The common thread binding them together was allegiance to a common emperor. The aristocracy and the new middle class. Aristocracy and middle class were two major classes of the 18th century Europe. The French-speaking landed aristocracy was a socially and politically powerful class, but most of the population comprised of peasants and small owners. They either tilled their own lands or cultivated the states of aristocrats as serfs. Growth of trade and industrial production led to emergence of industrial towns and a commercial class of traders. Due to industrialization, another social group, the educated, liberal middle class promoting nationalism and denouncing aristocracy emerged. What did liberal nationalism stand for? The term liberalism, Latin root liber, means free. Politically, it stressed on a government by consent and demolition of autocracy and clerical privileges. Equality before law did not mean universal adult suffrage. Napoleonic Code did not allow men without property and women a right to vote. The 39 confederacies of France, each with its own currencies, weights and measures, hampered free movement of people, goods and economic exchange. The customs union, or Zollverein, abolished tariff barriers and brought down the number of currencies to only 2. The new railway network facilitated mobility, economic growth, and inspired nationalism. A new conservatism after 1815. In 1815, the combined European forces of Britain, Russia, Prussia and Austria defeated Napoleon. They were inclined towards conservatism and wanted to preserve the traditional institutes of states and society like monarchy, the church, social hierarchies, property and the family. At the same time, they also approved of some changes introduced by Napoleon. With the belief that modernization could strengthen traditional institutions, they recommended a modern army, efficient bureaucracy, a dynamic economy, abolition of feudalism, and serfdom. In 1815, the European powers met at Vienna to draw a settlement for Europe and restore monarchies deposed during Napoleonic era. The Vienna Treaty resulted in restoration of Bourbon dynasty to power in France. France giving up its conquered territories, setting up of the Kingdom of Netherlands, including Belgium in north, and setting up Genoa in addition to Piedmont in south to prevent France's expansionist activities. Prussia was granted new territories along with parts of Saxony, Austria got control of northern Italy, and Russia got Poland. Napoleon's confederation of 39 states remained unchanged. The revolutionaries. Supporters of liberalism were against the conservative state and social institutions. Fearing suppression for opposing the conservative monarchies, people formed secret societies in Germany, France, Switzerland, and Poland, aiming at 1. Training revolutionaries and spreading the ideals of liberalism in Europe. 2. Opposing monarchies established by the Vienna Treaty. 3. Fighting for liberty and claim freedom from autocratic rule. 4. Stressing on the formation of nation-states. The Age of Revolutions 1830 to 1848. While the conservative rulers were consolidating their powers, the idea of liberalism and nationalism was taking shape of a revolution in various parts of Europe. The liberals and nationalists belonged to the educated middle-class elite. In July 1830, the liberal revolutionaries overthrew the Bourbon kings and installed a constitutional monarchy headed by Louis Philippe. The July Revolution triggered uprisings in Brussels, leading to Belgium disintegrating from the United Kingdom of the Netherlands. Greece, a part of Ottoman Empire since the 15th century, waged a war of independence against the Ottoman Empire. It triggered nationalist feelings in the educated elite across Europe and also had support from Greeks in exile and West European countries. The Treaty of Constantinople in 1832 finally acknowledged Greece as an independent nation. The Romantic imagination and national feeling. Romanticism was a cultural movement that helped in promoting the idea of a nation. The Romantic artists condemned glorification of reason and science. Emotions, intuitions, and mystical feelings were their focal points. According to German philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder, culture could be discovered only among the common people, thus folk. Only folk songs, folk poetry, and folk dances could express the spirit of a nation truly. Romanticists strongly emphasized on vernacular language. They opined that folklores and vernacular could effectively convey the modern nationalists' message to a vast illiterate audience. After Russian control, Russian language was forced on people everywhere. Despite Russian atrocities, the Polish people used their language as a symbol against Russian dominance. Hunger, hardship, and popular revolt. Europe faced acute economic hardship in 1830s due to a steep rise in population, widespread unemployment, and large-scale migrant population from rural to urban areas. Cheap machine-made products from industrially advanced England gave stiff competition to small producers in other European countries. The aristocracy enjoyed unbridled power and the peasants reeled under feudal dues and obligations. 1848, a year of poor harvest and huge price rise, triggered a mass protest on the streets in Paris. It ended the constitutional monarchy of Louis Philippe. The National Assembly proclaimed a republic, granted suffrage to all adult males above 21, and guaranteed the right to work. In 1845, weavers in Silesia revolted against exploitative contractors. 1848, the Revolution of the Liberals. While France faced uprisings in 1848, there were revolts in other parts of Europe, Germany, Italy, Poland, Austro-Hungarian too. The liberal middle class vehemently voiced its demand for nation-states based on parliamentary principles. Numerous political associations having members from the middle class reached Frankfurt to vote for an all-German National Assembly. The Frankfurt Parliament drafted a constitution to be headed by a monarchy subject to a parliament for a German nation. The parliament dominated by the middle class resisted demands of workers and artisans and lost their support. The liberal movement did not get voting rights to women. These movements were suppressed, but the monarchy realized that frequent revolts could be ended only by allowing concessions to the nationalist liberals. After 1848, the monarchies of Central and Eastern Europe introduced changes already prevalent in Western Europe before 1815. The making of Germany and Italy. Germany. Can the army be the architect of a nation? In the beginning of 18th century, Germany was divided into many states. The middle-class Germans nurtured strong nationalist sentiments. They tried to unite Germany into a united nation state governed by an elected parliament. Their revolts were suppressed by the monarchy and the military. Later on, Otto von Bismarck, the chief minister of Prussia, took the lead in the unification movement. He fought 3 wars with Austria, Denmark and France in 7 years and led Prussia to victory. It completed the process of unification of Germany. On January 18, 1871, the Prussian king, William I, was proclaimed German emperor in a ceremony held at Versailles. Italy unified. The 19th century Italy was fragmented into 7 states. Of these, only one, Sardinia Piedmont, was ruled by an Italian princely house. The north was ruled by Austrian Habsburgs. The centre was under the Pope and the southern regions were under the Bourbon kings of Spain. During the 1830s, Giuseppe Mazzini formed a secret society called Young Italy. When the revolutionary uprisings failed in 1831 and 1848, King Victor Emmanuel II endeavoured unification of Italian states through war. Under Chief Minister Cavour, Sardinia Piedmont defeated Austria in 1859. Armed volunteers under Garibaldi defeated the Spanish rulers in South Italy and the Kingdom of Two Sicilies in 1860 with the support of local peasants. By 1861, the process of Italy's unification was completed and King Victor Emmanuel II became the King of the United Italy. The strange case of Britain. Britain took the shape of a nation-state through a long-drawn process. Before 18th century, there was no British nation. The different British Isles had ethnic identities: the English, the Welsh, the Scots and the Irish. Each one followed its own culture and political traditions. As the English grew in stature in terms of wealth and power, they started influencing other nations of the islands. After a long struggle, the English Parliament successfully seized power from the monarchy in 1688. The Act of Union 1707 between England and Scotland led to the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. Through this act, England could extend its influence on Scotland. Under English dominance, the culture of Scotland was systematically destroyed. The Scots could neither speak their Gaelic language nor wear their national dress. Ireland also suffered similarly. The country of Ireland was divided between Protestants and Catholics. The English helped the Protestants to increase their Protestants' influence in a largely Catholic country. All Catholic revolts were suppressed by the British. In 1798, Ireland was forcibly assimilated in the United Kingdom. A new British nation took shape in British symbols like the British flag, Union Jack, and the British anthem, God Save Our Noble King. The promotion of English language and culture reduced the old nations to the position of subordinate partners in this union. Visualizing the nation. In the 18th and 19th century, artists started representing a country as a person. Nations were given an identity through female figures. The abstract form of a nation took a concrete shape with a female form. Thus, a female figure became an allegory or emblem of a nation. Artists during the French Revolution used the female form to convey ideas like liberty, justice, and republic. They also used objects to present certain ideals. Liberty was personified with a red cap or broken chain stood, and justice was personified by a blindfolded woman with weighing scales in hand. The female figure representing France was called Marianne. Her characteristics was inspired by liberty and republic, the red cap, the tricolour, and the cockade. Statues of Marianne were installed in public places so that people were reminded of their national symbol of unity and also identified with it. Marianne images were also marked on coins and stamps. Germania represented the German nation. Germania is visualized as wearing a crown of oak leaves, as the German oak is a symbol for heroism. Nationalism and imperialism. By the end of the 19th century, nationalism lost its characteristics of idealistic liberal democratic sentiment, which reflected prominently in the first half of the century. There was growing intolerance amongst the various nationalist groups. The dominant European powers used their intolerance to fulfill their own imperial aims. The region called Balkan was a serious source of nationalist tension in Europe after 1871. The Balkan region comprised of the modern-day Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, Macedonia, Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Slovenia, Serbia, and Montenegro. Their inhabitants were broadly known as the Slavs. The Ottoman Empire, when headed towards a collapse, initiated a feeling of nationalism. It tried to strengthen itself by modernization and internal reforms, yet could not stop its European nations by breaking away. Each separated nation fought with the other for political rights and independence. Struggle of supremacy on each other amongst the Slavic nations made it a region of intense strife. The Balkans also got embroiled in big power rivalry. Each power, Russia, Germany, England, Austro-Hungary, came in conflict with the other power having hold on the Balkan region to extend its own control over the area. A series of wars in the region paved way for World War I. Nationalism, combined with imperialism, led Europe to disaster in 1914. People in European colonies opposed and contested imperial powers to form independent nation-states. They developed their own sense of nationality and rejected the ideals of European nationalism. The idea of nation-states found acceptance universally. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. Nationalism is an ideology that gives a sense of oneness or a common identity to the people of a nation through language, culture, etc. The new French flag, the tricolour, National Assembly, a centralized administrative system, uniform laws, uniform system of weights and measures, and adoption of French as a common language were the hallmarks of the French Revolution. Aristocracy and middle class were two major classes of the 18th century Europe. The term liberalism, Latin root liber, means free. The Napoleonic Code did not allow men without property and women a right to vote. In 1815, the combined European forces of Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria defeated Napoleon. They were inclined towards conservatism, fearing suppression for opposing the conservative monarchies. People formed secret societies in Germany, France, Switzerland, and Poland. The liberals and nationalists belonged to the educated middle-class elite. The Treaty of Constantinople in 1832 finally acknowledged Greece as an independent nation. Romanticism was a cultural movement that helped in promoting the idea of a nation. Europe faced acute economic hardship in 1830s due to a steep rise in population, widespread unemployment, and large-scale migrant population from rural to urban areas. Cheap machine-made products from industrially advanced England gave stiff competition to small producers in other European countries. The Frankfurt Parliament drafted a constitution to be headed by a monarchy subject to a parliament of a German nation. On January 18, 1871, the Prussian king William I was proclaimed German emperor in a ceremony held at Versailles. King Victor Emmanuel II became the king of the United Italy in 1861. In the 18th and 19th century, artists started represented countries through female figures. By the end of the 19th century, nationalism lost its characteristics of idealistic liberal democratic sentiment. Nationalism combined with imperialism led Europe to disaster in 1914. The idea of nation-states found acceptance universally.